Good evening. Welcome to the post-game edition of the Kenny and Renny Show. I am Ken Weeb, and we are joined this evening by Scott Billeck from the Winnipeg Sun, pinch hitter extraordinaire.
I'm just a larger version of Kenny, or Renny, so that's all.
Well, we're happy to have you here. There's no doubt about that. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, we know this is a big news day, folks, and we will get to that news eventually, I think. But for those of you who haven't seen, Frank Saravelli was kind enough to join Sean Reynolds and myself earlier this afternoon, and we were able to dive in to the Chicago Blackhawks situation, Kyle Beach, and what may be happening throughout. We know there has been some news since that show ran. The Kevin Cheveldayoff's meeting with Gary Bettman has been pushed up to Friday afternoon. Which I think was a smart move on all parties. There was no need to wait until Monday. I think that was important to get to. Obviously, we also know, Scott, there was some news tonight. Maybe we'll start with your reaction to the Joel Quenneville resignation.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion, wasn't it? Since Tuesday, we've had more information come out, more, just different things that have come out, more reaction, more public pressure, all these things, right? And I think that's kind of, we're at 6 or 7 now, I guess, right? And I think Quenneville, being the head coach, knowing the video, this would be like if Paul Maurice and Matt Prefontaine kind of were together, right? They work together quite. Paul Maurice talks very highly of Matt Prefontaine and how much work he does, how much work goes into being a video coach. This isn't just a guy who just cuts some video in the back room. No, there's a lot of work that goes into this. So I think Joe Quenneville, it's hard to know how much he knew, but the assumption would be that he knew quite well what was going on. And part of it was yesterday or this morning, I guess it was, kind of just a dud on his pregame or postgame. I guess that was yesterday, on his postgame or pregame interview before he inexplicably somehow ended up on the Florida's bench. But I think it's the right move. And the problem with this is you can't just cut part of the cancer out. You have to cut it all out. And I don't know what that means for Kevin Cheveldayoff tomorrow, but it doesn't look good. I'm not sure. I don't want to say that he is getting fired or let go or resign, because we don't know what's going on. And between him and Quenneville, it is a different situation, right? One's an assistant general manager who wasn't probably as intertwined, but at the same time, still one of the men, as John Tortorella put it today, during a broadcast, saying that this is one of 7 guys who didn't stand up at any point to put an end to it quicker, and that was the case. So yeah, tomorrow is going to be a day of reckoning, one way or the other, and I don't know what it's going to end up being. So
I don't think anybody does, and I think as we talked about in the afternoon, some answers need to be provided, whether that's in the meeting, and I think afterward, I think it would be a smart decision to address the public as well, beyond what we've seen in terms of the written statement. Anyways, we'll get back to that at another time. And as I mentioned, for those of you just joining us, this subject was dealt with in expansive fashion on our long form show with Frank Saravelli of Daily Face Off.
He was great.
So yeah, he was fantastic, and thank you for watching it. Just for the folks, we're not ignoring the story. The story has been discussed at length, and I think we're going to spend a good chunk of the evening here in the wee hours of the morning discussing the hockey game that was played, and there will be a lot more time to discuss the next move and what happens next with the Blackhawks situation. And as I mentioned in the afternoon, I know you feel this way also, Scott, from our personal conversations. Just an incredible act and show of courage by Kyle Beach, and that was very raw and emotional, very tough to watch. There's no doubt about that, but we give him all the courage, credit for having the courage to come forward, and he's going to help so many people by being able to do that. It's a horrific thing that he had to go through, but it's an important step in the process, and the next step is to create an environment where that never ever happens again, and all the safeguards are put in place that were not in place at the time of this horrific incident. So anyways, tonight was an interesting contest. The Jets win a 4th consecutive game, points in 5. Scott, what was your biggest takeaway from the Jets 3-2 victory over the LA Kings tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the Jets, again, didn't play their best game, and I don't think we've seen really their best game. Maybe that Anaheim 5-1 was probably the best of the season so far in terms of kind of, just putting it together. But, I think you're seeing a team that has the ability to win games even though when they don't play their best. And tonight didn't need a 19-second miracle by, Nikolai Ehlers to do it. It was, it was a good third period that they found the tying goal early and then went out and played a pretty good period. Eric Comrie, I thought, was fantastic tonight. I mean, there's a lot of doubters with Eric Comrie, and I was one of them. I mean, in my bold predictions to start the year, in my preview, I thought he'd be out of here by American Thanksgiving, or there'd be a replacement for him. I'm not so sure that's the case now, and bold predictions are what they are. But Eric Comrie played a good game. I wouldn't pin either of the 2 goals really on him. One's a breakaway that's difficult, and the other one is just the Jets got caught in their own end, and that's one of the the downsides of the Jets so far this season is they are still getting hemmed in defensively. They're not sound, but again, they found a way to play to win a game, and they did it through what has become this incredible duo between Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois. And we can factor Evgeny Svechnikov in there too, because I think he plays an important role on that line. But Connor and Dubois have played so well together. Paul Maurice mentioned it after the game. I'm not sure, again, if Blake Wheeler returns on Saturday, I don't think he's coming back onto the top line. I think we know what the top line on this team is right now until Mark Scheifele returns. But yeah, I mean, that's my takeaway from the game. They didn't play well enough, that as they needed to, but they found a way to win, and that's what this team hasn't really had, I would suggest, all the time in the last couple of years. But they're getting back to that. They have the skill, the talent. Andrew Kopp had another good game. Here's a guy who's probably getting pushed to the back burner a little bit in terms of it because of how well Connor and Dubois have played. But Andrew Kopp has been playing tremendous hockey as well. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good to take out of that game, but there are some things as usual that they have to work on, and a couple of those things were evident again in some of the goals that they gave up tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. A great following in my footsteps with a great step to the buffet line there right away. That's some good. Definitely some good work by you. Lots of things to. No, it's good.
We learn from the best, man.
That's a stick tap right there. There's no doubt about that. And thanks for the fellas that are and the folks, gentlemen and ladies that are coming over from the Illegal Curve show. Thanks for sending them over. And we know it's about to be 1 a.m. and we're just getting rolling here. But yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'm going to come back to Pierre-Luc Dubois, and no, this is not a night where I have the receipts piled up on that front, but we may have an episode of that at some point, but that will not be today. First and foremost, I think it was very important for Pierre-Luc Dubois to have a game like that, Scott, after the 2 turnovers. He played well the other night, but he had 2 turnovers that led directly to goals. So guess what? You can either feel sorry for yourself or lose confidence, or what you can also do is come back and score 2 goals and put that directly in the rearview mirror. Yeah. And say, guess what? That was an off night. One was a bad decision. I think the other one, I think the second turnover was more the right read. It just wasn't executed properly. The timing was off with Pionk on that reverse. And it was a very smart, I think it was more the anticipation by Zegras rather than a casual play. But still, it led directly to a goal. And I mean, when you win games like that, as Paul Maurice could joke about, the most dangerous team on both ends of the ice. I mean, that was a classic line, but what we saw tonight was a dominant line at both ends once again. And Kyle Connor with three helpers tonight, having another really good game. I mean, that setup for the GWG is just great speed, and Dubois with the net drive. I mean, just a smart play all around by both of those guys. no, everyone here knows that what I've said about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it's interesting, Scott. My prediction of I think 25 and 65 plus might be low. I mean, 25 might be low at this point.
I had him at 70, and that might be low at this point too, right? Like, I mean, you're right. And I think I don't want to cut you off here, but
No.
Paul Maurice said after the game tonight that he has a lot of time, a certain amount of time for the inconsistency of Dubois. I mean, I think a lot of us fail to realize that this kid, and I will call him a kid here because he is 23, and he's not that old, and he's still, but he's played a lot of seasons in the NHL now, and so everybody just assumes he has all this experience. Well, he's now in a new team, and he's going. He's still learning how to play with whoever it is, and right now it's Kyle Connor, and it's worked out really well for him. And so no, I think there's time for it, and I think you pointed out in your answer or when you were talking there is that he didn't let that game get him down. He talked about it after the game. He needs to be consistency and work on his consistency. And I think when you have an inconsistent game, the best way to work on your consistency is to go back out the next night and fix mistakes and play the same way offensively that he was playing. So I know how Kenny eats. We've had a few meals together, broke bread together on the road. But yeah, no, he's played well. I think he's probably, he certainly has defied a lot of the expectations that people had. I mean, I wrote in my game story tonight that there's a lot of people that wrote him off after 41 games last year,
which was silly.
It is silly, and I think we don't understand the gravity of how difficult last season was for him and just for a lot of players. I'm not trying to make excuses here, but we have to understand. These guys played during a COVID season, and Blake Wheeler. I mean, and this is an aside, but Blake Wheeler talked about his what do you call it? His quarantine and how difficult it was just to spend 3 days stuck in a hotel room by himself. Well, a lot of guys had to do that last year, just on road trips and whatever. There wasn't a lot of things to do. It's a tough mental grind to do that, and I think this year we had a good summer. He said it, and then we've seen it. We saw it during training camp, and now he's showing it in the regular season. And this is the Pierre-Luc Dubois who maybe improved from his time in Columbus, and without all of the distractions from that, without maybe not wanting to be there, without the contract stuff, all of that, we're just got a guy who's kind of playing freely now. And I think the Jets are enjoying the benefits of it. They obviously are. I mean, he scored 2 tonight, and one of those goals is the game winner, and he's got 6 on the year and a 5-game point streak. I mean, what else can you ask from him at this point of the year? And he's driving this team forward without Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler. And I think that's maybe the biggest test that he would have early on in the season. I think he's passing it, with honors right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've discussed, and we've discussed this as well, I mean, I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy that the more responsibility you give him, the better he plays. And I mean, it's easy to kind of look at yourself in sort of a deferring role when you're playing behind a Mark Scheifele. But with Scheifele being out, I think he's really elevated that game and taken it to another level. And I think it really sets the Jets up for having a true 1A and 1B line, which is what we've talked about, the importance. I mean, this isn't like the old days where, there was Ladd, Wheeler, and Little, and that was it, right? If you shut down that line, you beat the Jets for the first, 2 or 3 years before Mark Scheifele became a full-time player. And before I go wild on that, we should update folks who maybe were unfamiliar. Mark Scheifele is out of COVID protocol as well. He skated here back in Winnipeg today. He will continue to skate there. And the reason he will not join the Jets in California, for those folks who are unaware, is due to the Canadian border issue. Because of his COVID situation, he could get to the States, but then he would not be able to play that first game back. So what the Jets are going to do is have Mark Scheifele continue to work out here in Winnipeg, and I expect him to be in the lineup on Tuesday against the Dallas Stars. In terms of Blake Wheeler, he skated with the team the last 2 days now. I do think as long as he feels good after tomorrow's skate, I do think that he would come into the lineup on Saturday night. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but I do anticipate him being back as long as he's feeling good. We'll dive into where he'll fit in a little bit later, but I think that's an important development. And I know that Paul Maurice has said he's enjoyed certain aspects of the 11 and 7. And I mean, early in the game, I actually liked the fact that he got Dubois and Ehlers into those turns on the fourth line. But I think the Jets need to get back to 12 and 6 as soon as possible. And another thing we'll have to watch, Scott. I mean, we saw what happened with Phil Deneau and Logan Stanley, with him, clipping him with his skate onto his left knee. I know, yes, he did come back and I think kill a penalty and was on the ice later on, but we'll be monitoring that situation as we roll along. And in terms of, I mean, we talked a lot about the positives. I really think that it was, definitely poor puck management. It was an exceptional play by Alex Iafallo to create that turnover. I think that's kind of what got lost in the shuffle. Definitely a poor sort out, and that puck has to get out. But it was an extraordinary effort from the back pressure that prevented the puck from being out. It was kind of a bouncing puck a little bit, but that's definitely one of those things that is an easily correctable mistake. It was a poor puck management for sure. And on the other one, it was, it was all a little bit disjointed on the first goal. I don't know that it was a terrible pinch, but it was a hair late. And then you didn't have the F3 quickly enough. And then Beaulieu was kind of a little bit caught in the spacing issue. And that's what allowed the Kings forward to sneak behind. And that was a goal that can't happen. I mean, it does happen early in the year because you're not in your timing, but that was a play that, again, it's an easily correctable mistake.
And I thought it was timing, just to intercede there. I thought it was a timing thing. And if you watch Stanley on that, it's almost like there was just a second, not even a millisecond of indecision. And that's the part that beat him, right? And so I think, he will get the timing. And just to go back to the Beaulieu thing and 11-4, I mean, if you're going to, you might as well go back to 12 and 6 because you're playing Nathan Beaulieu. I'm looking at the timesheet. He played 407 tonight. 104 shorthanded, fine. I mean, he's been good on the PK, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why you want to keep him in. The Jets only allowed one shot on the shorthanded tonight, which was an improvement. You are also playing against a Kings team that's not very good, so that's the other, the flip side, the devil advocate, if you will, on that. But again, at any time that these Jets, this Jets team kills off a penalty, it's going to help build them confidence in doing it. And I didn't see any real glaring errors on the PK tonight that we've seen. I thought it was relatively, I guess, tidy is the word.
Yeah, no, it's a good word, and I actually quite like Paul Stastny's improvement on the penalty kill as well. I think he's done a really nice job in that area. It was kind of one of the things that I wondered a little bit last year when the Jets PK went through a tough stretch. I kind of wondered why or if Paul Maurice would go to him at one point. I know we knew that they had their penalty killers kind of in tow, but I thought that they could have gone to that third turn as well there. I mean, Appleton was a guy who was heavily involved when Thompson was out with the injury early, but he kind of got sort of shuffled onto the side, and I thought that maybe getting Stastny in there might have helped the PK overall there too, but we know that it's hard. Those are taxing minutes on a veteran player, so you understand that would be something that you would maybe hold off on at times, but I've actually thought that it's really done a nice job, and I know we've seen so much success with Lowry and Kopp together. They're a very good unit. We know at the start of the year they had some bad bounces on some of their goals, but I actually think splitting them up has helped because it's allowed the people that are killing with them to read off of them very well, and I think Stastny's done an exceptional job since coming back in, and players are doing a better job of getting into shot lanes, and they're doing a really nice job on their reads. Their reads are much quicker, they're crisper, and you have to, at some point, you got to give the coaching staff credit because they kept saying that they weren't that far off. Well, as it turns out, they were right. The last two games, it has been right on. It's an important game for the Jets to try to build on that momentum of this road trip as they play the San Jose Sharks on Saturday night. And I'll be curious to see what happens from there. Lots of things to get at. For folks wondering about Sean is not going on the IR. He has an early flight tomorrow. This is not a hair emergency, nothing of that nature. But we're very thankful for Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun to be joining us here this evening. What else? What stood out? Okay, Neil Pionk. Let's talk about Neil Pionk. I think there have been some kind of up and down moments. I think it's pretty fair to say, especially defensively. Obviously, the offense has been there for sure. He's got up to 8 assists now on the season. I think he made I really love the play that he made. The patience that he was able to show while under serious duress on the Dubois game winner. He is pressured significantly, but has the confidence and the support to get the puck to Pierre-Luc Dubois on the exit while he was severely under pressure. That's the kind of play we saw from Neil Pionk all of last year. He was exceptional in that area. I think there maybe been some bouncing pucks, and I think he's getting used to a new partner. But I thought this was a big step forward for Neil Pionk on the back end. What did you see from his game tonight?
Yeah, contributed on the score sheet too with 2 assists. I thought I guess the thing is I didn't really notice him that much, and so that's usually the sign of a good game for a defenseman, I suppose. He did have a couple of giveaways in the game, but it's weird. I'm not sure what it is with Pionk this year. I don't know if they're just heightened expectations with the contract, or and maybe that is it, right? And I'm not sure. I mean, I think teams now realize that Neil Pionk is a pretty good defenseman, pretty good player, and so maybe they are keying in on him, right? I don't know. I mean, that's part of it, and so maybe that's another aspect of his game that he needs now kind of work on. Sorry, I have a Halls, and I had strep last week, and I'm still getting over it. And so
it's okay, you're battling through it. You're playing through it.
Yeah, I play hurt always. Anyways, but yeah, no, I just think he's getting used to playing it's not a different role necessarily, but just the way that teams are playing him this year. I think last year they realized that he was very good defensively, and teams kind of want to take him, or at least pressure him more, and see what he can do. And at times this year it hasn't looked great, but I think tonight, like you said, it was better. I mean, if he can make those plays under duress, that's what you want to see from him, because it looks like he's going to be under duress a little bit more. So, I'm good now, Phyllis. Appreciate the thing. My voice is back. I can talk again, but not necessarily a good thing for everybody. But no, and he's still physical, and 5 hits tonight. I mean, he's still playing that sort of game. I think it's just new partnership. I thought last year he kind of really drove that partnership with Forbert, Derek Forbert. This year, I don't know what that is. I'm not sure if they're still trying to get work that out with Dylan, Brendan Dillon there. But I don't think it's horrible. I think it's just kind of maybe a kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, and a quick one, folks, for Valerie and for Marshall. Mentioned this earlier. We're not ignoring the big topic of the day, but I would ask you just to please kindly check out what Sean and myself and Frank Saravelli spent the afternoon show discussing it in full detail. So we're trying to provide a little bit of a breather from what it was some pretty heavy news from Kyle Beach and company. So it's not that we're ignoring it, but we'd encourage you to check that out if you can, and we'll definitely be diving more into the subject once we hear what happens at the meeting on Friday and what the subsequent results or actions are taken on that front. So thank you for your patience on that. Let's maybe dive in a little bit on so on Saturday comes, Blake Wheeler plays. Where are you putting him?
Third line.
With Lowry to start?
With Lowry, yeah. I think so. And I think, again, we've talked about, you guys have talked about this on your show because I watch it all the time. I'm a big fan, number one fan. But yeah, no, I think Christian Vesalainen has been good at times and not good at times. And I don't think he's really kind of held down that job. And I think that's an easy place to put him, at least for one game, to see how it goes and then go from there. I'm not sure who comes out of the lineup, but you don't have to. Beaulieu comes out of the lineup and they play and they play 12 forwards. So I think he goes Lowry. I think it's a pace of game that Blake can play. And I don't think, there's no way that it would be asinine for Paul Maurice to break up that line and put him back with Kyle Connor or whatever it is. Maybe there's no real argument. You can't really put him on the second line, the quote unquote second line, because that's where Nikolai Ehlers plays. You could move Nikolai Ehlers over potentially to the left, but I don't think that's really what you want to do because he prefers the right. I think there's a spot there that you can put him in where Vesalainen is playing right now. And go from there and start it there. And then when Scheifele comes back, assuming he plays next week when they get back here, possibly he's still staying there, and he stays there. Paul Stastny plays on the left side, and you go from there with that. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I struggle to say this with confidence that Paul Maurice is going to keep, this Svechnikov, Connor, and Dubois line together. But I don't think that line's really given him a choice. So I think they stay together, and Blake Wheeler starts and plays less minutes, and part of that is trying to get him back into game shape, right? I mean, this is a guy who's missed 5 games now, I guess it is. 5 games, right? So
5 games with the 11-7, yep.
Right. So exactly. So I mean, I don't think Blake Wheeler is in any shape to play a top line role. He might beg to differ on that, and fair enough to him. But I think this top line has shown that they deserve the benefit of the doubt. And when Wheeler comes back, he accepts a bit of a lesser role, and see how that kind of works. Because I think what this is shown here, it's not an experiment. It's kind of this, forced because of the COVID protocol for 2 guys. But guys have stepped up and shown that they can play. And I know you talked about this on, maybe it was the last one or the night before, the game before, but why can you not have more dynamic, dynasties, whatever the word is, in the lineup, instead of having like the traditional Blake Wheeler's got to play top 6 or whatever it is? Why can't you have maybe the top 9 guys playing reasonably close minutes, and having guys that really work together? And maybe you disagree on that, but I think that these lines right now, as they are working reasonably well together. Maybe exception for the third line. So see how it goes, and put Wheeler there, and go from there, and give it a look against a Sharks team that the Jets will probably want revenge against.
Yeah, I think that the third line is sort of still a work in progress. I think that obviously the constant is Lowry, but the identity of the third line, I thought actually Vesalainen had a couple of really good shifts earlier where he got engaged physically, but it just hasn't seemed to click the same way that we expected. Obviously, there have been some flashes from Jansen Harkins and flashes from Vesalainen, but I actually think that having Blake Wheeler play a straight line game would help give that line some identity out of the gate. And I do think at some point, whether it's Paul Stastny on the left side or maybe it's Wheeler and Stastny together, I think there's some potential there. And maybe even the 3 of them play together. I think there's some potential there. But I also, this is not a knock, as I said last time. This is not a knock against Yevgeny Svechnikov. I think he's playing very well. Blake Wheeler's also played well with Dubois at times, so there I still can see if Svechnikov's played dips. Again, he hasn't even played 50 NHL games, so this is just a reminder. We're gonna
have a wake up coming here.
No, it's not a full wake up. It's just a reminder. I think he's playing great, and but the real drivers on that line are the big drivers, as they should be, are Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois right now, and I think that Wheeler could fit with them at some point too. Depending on how long it takes him to get back up to full speed and full volume. The interesting part for me, actually, I've liked quite a bit how Kopp and Ehlers have mixed together, and Albin. Ehlers has played. He earlier in his career he played a lot on the left side. He prefers to play on the right, but one of the exceptions is if you play Ehlers on the left with Mark Scheifele, where you have a right-handed shot dominant player that can get the puck in his hands a little bit more. I think that can work. But I think, too, Ehlers would prefer to play on the right, and I still think that, what we saw from Andrew Kopp and Mark Scheifele when Blake Wheeler came out of the lineup in the game against Minnesota, I think there's some potential there to see those guys put together at some point, or maybe Lowry's there. Not Lowry, but maybe.
How about this one? How about Blake Wheeler plays center for the first game back?
No,
on the second line, move Kopp over.
No, I don't know.
Keep Kopp. No, okay. Right.
Why? Kopp is playing well at center. If you're easing Wheeler in, why would you give him the extra responsibility of having to play center?
Because I think he likes playing center, and that's a place that he's played well before in the past, I thought. Whatever.
He played hard and played well there, but you're adding responsibility at a time you're trying to ease him back in.
Well, then the only place really to put him is the third line, then, I think, right?
That's where I would start him. But we'll see how it goes from there on, and there too. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think that Scheifele is going to be so eager to get back in like here's a guy if
Sure,
you look
of
back
course.
like now you go back to the qualifying round, you played 3 shifts in the qualifying round before a terrible injury. You get knocked out of the second round series against Montreal in the last minute of game 1. And now you sit out a game of the suspension, and now you've sat out 4 games with the COVID. I mean, you're gonna with the COVID protocols, and now you're gonna have
I'm just
a
laughing at
5th
the
game.
chat. Don't worry.
No, it's okay. There's a lot happening there. There's a lot happening. There's a lot happening. So I think he'll be really
right.
eager. And there too. So Frosty here, I think, could you put Harkins with Scheifele? I mean, they played together briefly in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there could be some potential there. Maybe unlock a little bit more of that offense that Jansen Harkins has. There's lots of options, and that's the big thing for Paul Maurice, that he has some options at his disposal. So that's a good
I'm
one.
full of them.
I like it. There's some good stuff happening there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the Scheifele thing is like, man, here's a guy who's like desperate to make the Olympic team, right? And has had just the worst start you could possibly have, and not to any fault of his own, obviously, but just it's a terrible start to have. I mean, he's got 2 assists in 2 games, point per game pace, all that's great, but his missed time is out, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's a tough one. So yeah, I'm just agreeing with you. I think he is going to come in with a little pea and vinegar there and be ready to go again. So yeah, I mean, I with that line there, I don't know. Like, I mean, is Nikolai Ehlers? Do we think he's struggling enough that you would want to put him on the left side to try and get him kick-started? I don't think so. I mean, I think
I don't even think he's struggling at all. I just think that I think there's the potential if you're going to keep Dubois and Connor together, which we agree that they should for the time being. I think the natural position would be to put Ehlers with Scheifele, because then you have still 2 very dynamic players on that line, and given how Ehlers has become more of a shoot-first player. And Scheifele, we know he has a great release and shot, but he still often looks at a pass-first situation. So I think that those two could mesh really well together. And then you have the defensive conscience of Andrew Kopp with them. And you also have the finish. I mean, here's another classic, right? Kopp's up to 5 goals. So all the people who, the Kopp can't finish crowd, they've had to be pretty quiet out of the gate here. He's playing very well, and he's playing exceptional hockey. And there too, today is the first one he got on the power play. So that's 4 even strength goals and 1 on the power plays. So I mean, I think it'd be interesting to try. I mean, there have been times in the past where Ehlers played on the wing with Scheifele and Wheeler. I mean, I think it was Ehlers' big third. We talked about the slow start in the 2017-18 year, where you had the Mason pull, and I think they gave up 10 or 12 goals in the first 2 games. They were down going into the third period in Edmonton, and then Ehlers went wild. Well, he was playing with Scheifele and Wheeler in that game, so it's not like he can't play on the left side. It just. I mean, it's just right now he feels so much better on the right side, and you could still play him on the right side. You could still put Kopp. Kopp's more naturally on the left side as well. But I mean, Stastny's playing pretty well with that line as well. But
it's tough.
You need to find Scheifele the minutes, though. You're going to need to find Mark the minutes. I mean, that's the thing.
He's going back to the top line. You
just
have to figure out
who's going to be with him.
Who's going to be with him, right? And that's. It's a good problem to have for Paul Maurice, I think, but it's a tough one because he does have a couple of lines that are doing relatively well together, and you don't want to break him up. So what is the one that you break up? And I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is Wheeler with Kopp and Dubois, and because as Renee put in the chat a little above here is Blake Wheeler is a playmaker. And so, I mean, we've seen obviously that, Kyle Connor can be a playmaker, but you do have 2 kind of killers on that line who can put the puck in the back of the net. So maybe you put Wheeler on that right side with those 2 and demote Svechnikov somewhere in the lineup. Maybe to the third line.
One thing too, it's not a demotion. I think if you put him on the third line, you can help give that line some identity with Lowry, and you've got a big-bodied guy that is more of a natural. Yeah. We know that Vesalainen has the shot, and we saw it. Yeah, but you got a guy that you can lean on. Like, it's when the premise of putting Jack Roslovic there, you got a guy who has this great shot and release. It should have worked, right? I mean, that was a situation that should have worked.
He just doesn't do it enough.
It just didn't happen, right? So, and one quick one here. So, yes, Paul, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Ehlers, and Kyle Connor, that was the first line that was put together, I believe, when Pierre-Luc Dubois arrived in Winnipeg last year after coming out of quarantine. I just don't think there was as much chemistry with that group, and I think we saw Dubois more with Ehlers, and there wasn't as much of a natural chemistry, and got into this a little bit after the last game. I think because Kyle Connor plays more of a direct, straight line kind of game. Yes, he still has the agility and speed to go east-west like Nikolai Ehlers, but he's a little bit more predictable, and I think that's one of the big reasons why it has fit so well with Pierre-Luc Dubois. He has a much better, like you've talked about before, Svechnikov and Dubois worked because he can play with a guy that goes east-west, but I think he also enjoys playing with a guy who's a little bit more predictable. That's what we always heard about, like when Kyle Connor started playing with Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, those guys loved playing with him because they knew where he was going. His north-south game really blended well with them. And while we're on the subject, Kyle Connor has been playing an excellent two-way game, Scott. I mean, it's one of the, I don't know if necessarily bigger surprises, but for a guy who came in needing to work on his 200-foot game, he's done that, he's done an exceptional job on the defensive side of the game. I said it with Jeff Merrick earlier today on the Fan 590. Kyle Connor's not only playing like a guy who wants to be on the Olympic team, he's playing like a guy that probably could be on the first line of the U.S. Olympic team and be one of their more dominant players.
I 100% agree. I mean, I wrote a story in the preseason wondering about his kind of superstar status and all that. I think he's shown that he can play both. So we have to realize here too that he plays very difficult minutes, I suppose. He's playing against top line, so his analytics aren't always going to look great. I mean, there are players out there, yes, that play very difficult. Sidney Crosby's, Patrice Bergerons of the world, of course. They play good minutes and have great analytics. Kyle Connor, and we have to understand too that this line isn't the best defensive line as it is, right? But it's not. I mean, if you want to look individually, I've seen things out of Kyle Connor this year that I didn't see, and I'm sure you agree, maybe in previous years where it's just those little back checks, and they're not little, but those are big things. Those are changes in Kyle Connor's game where he's reading a certain play, knows that he can use his speed, and is going and getting back into a play to lift a stick, to break up a pass, whatever it is, right? We've seen this, and I think there's a lot of just, it's kind of, built into or, baked into people that Kyle Connor can't play defense. I disagree. I think any player can learn how to play defense, and I think Kyle Connor took that to heart over this summer and like, hey, he has all the tools to play offensively. We've seen it. We saw the pass tonight. We've seen the goals. He can do it on the power play. He's not unaware. Kyle Connor. Here's the story. Kyle Connor was, I never thought when Kyle Connor came here, he barely said a word. He didn't say a lot. He was, he has grown so much. And I'm not trying to, gush is the word that we use with Paul Maurice. But Kyle Connor has come so far as a player and as a person. He talks so fluently now and talks so confidently about his game and honestly about his game. And I think that's the thing that maybe people don't always see, because not everybody gets to talk to Kyle Connor all the time. We're able to do that because of the job that we do. And so I'm trying to impress upon the people here that are watching is that I've seen this change in him, and it's a maturation, right? It's a maturation of a player who is still very young. Was Kyle Connor still 24, right? I mean, he even said, we call him a veteran now because he's played so long. But he said even to a question that earlier in the years, like, no, I'm still a young guy. But I think he's kind of coming into the fact that he's coming into the prime of his career and into his own game where it is a two-way game now. I think we're seeing that to the start of the year. It's a small sample size. I get that. I mean, that's always the thing here. But it's the things that we are seeing from him that I don't know if those are things that he just gets away from at some point. These are things that he's learned to do, the back checks, all that kind of stuff, reading the plays better defensively that have helped this team this year. So that's my opinion on it. I don't know what the analytics kind of look at. I was trying to look them up as you were asking the question. But you have to take some of those. I'm an analytics guy. I like to use them. But sometimes I think we have to realize that this team isn't the best analytics team because they just don't play very well defensively. But there are guys that make improvements, and I think Kyle Connor's just been one of them. So
For
I
sure.
100% agree. Yeah.
For some folks who maybe didn't see the column and the chance you had to talk to him one-on-one in the preseason, Scott, what did you think of Scott, or of Kyle, kind of being a little bit offended about being? It's the sort of seemed like the most forward he had been when it came to being underrated and kind of being under the radar. I mean, I'm curious for maybe you mind sharing his thoughts on that subject.
I don't know if he was even as offended as he was just like, had the attitude of, I don't care anymore, right? Because it's people can say what they want about him, and so my whole angle on that story was, I think that Kyle Connor, and I think maybe superstar is probably used too much, but I think Kyle Connor is underrated in this league, even though he's been a perennial 30-goal scorer and probably would easily have hit 40 2 seasons ago, if not
38
for COVID,
with 11 games left. Yeah.
And so, but we've seen this kind of steady rise, but I mean, and I looked at the thing, he had dropped this year in terms of the, NHL's top 50. And I know these ranking lists don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of thing. Yep. But at the same time, it's like, how does a guy who has been so consistent and gotten better every year drop in the rankings and thing? Have that many players kind of become better than him? And I don't think so. And so I think he is underrated, and that was kind of it. But when I asked him about it, and I think, again, this speaks to his maturation, is that he's just like, I don't care. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going out there. I know what I need to do. I'm doing what I need to do. The results speak for themselves, and that's kind of what he basically said to me. But he also said he knows he needs to be better defensively. So it's not like he's like, oh man, I'm just the best offensive player, and that's all it is. Part of it is like there's that self-acknowledgement that he needed to be better defensively, and there's the conscious effort to do so. And so, it was good. It was a good chat with him because I hadn't had that in a while. Since he had started kind of with this, just because of COVID and all that, and it was the first time that we had one-on-ones in almost 2 seasons, right? And so it was interesting to talk to him. It was right before he was about to play golf, but he gave me all the time in the world to ask questions. He was fine with it. He was joking. I'm just, I'm saying these things because it's the color that kind of brings, to the point where this guy has become a different person because he's just growing as a human being. And so I think that kind of gets lost at times in the numbers and the statistics, but I think he's just played really well and he's done a good job. And I think we're seeing that. I think, the biggest thing that we always have to find is, does it match, right? Does what this guy says match what he's doing on the ice? And I think right now that is the case.
It's been really impressive, and man, I mean, his speed through the neutral zone on the goal the other day, just really impressive. Really on the Svechnikov goal. I mean, that's all Kyle Connor, just exploding through the neutral zone to create that space. I know you touched on it in the first trip to the buffet there, but let's dig a little bit deeper into Eric Comrie. I'll share a few things first. I know you touched on it a little bit more, but I actually liked the way that he seemed pretty calm in the net. I mean, obviously there were a few flurries, which is natural to happen. Let's not forget here. I mean, Eric Comrie played in 5 games last year, 1 in the NHL and 4 in the American Hockey League. Everyone who thinks that he should be looking like Connor Hellebuck, I mean, come on, folks. Like, it's a hard position for the people who are 100%. In a rhythm. Here's a guy who, you've had two games in the preseason. I mean, like, that's a long time. So between starts. So, again, he's been very open. I love the way that he handled his interviews yesterday. He is a lot of people would shy away from the conversation about if I'm not good enough, I'm gone. He's openly saying, hey, this is a competition. I need to play well. My job is to win games. I mean, it's 100% true, but I mean, here's a guy who's a mature individual. We know he's an incredibly hard worker. And we know that he's put himself in the best position to succeed. Whether or not he succeeds, we don't know that. It's still too small a sample size to determine that. But I don't think we can forget, this is a guy who's had success at every level. I mean, it's not like he's somebody who's coming out of nowhere. This is a guy who was a top prospect. He was a very good junior goalie, very good in the American Hockey League, and just hasn't found his footing at the NHL level. And today, in that second period, 15 shots. I mean, that period could have gone south in a hurry. The Jets were struggling mightily.
And he stood in there.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and there too, he didn't look nervous. So when the Jets got the two goals to take the lead, he didn't look nervous. But this is super important. I mean, the Jets need Eric Comrie to play next week, either against the Chicago Blackhawks or against the New York Islanders, whichever way they decide to do it.
Yep.
I mean, normally the backup gets the second end of the back-to-back. I'm not sure how the Jets will do it. I don't know if whether they'll put him in against the tougher competition or if they want to have Hellebuck against the Islanders, who are kind of one of those Stanley Cup contenders. But he'll be starting. So you know what? This was an important time to get Hellebuck a breather and for Comrie to get his footing and kind of build some foundation underneath him. So I thought that was an important showing for him. And it's a reward. Like, let's not kid ourselves. There have been some rough nights for him between the pipes, wearing the Jets jersey, whether it was that game in Minnesota where it didn't go well in the first period, things of that nature. But here's a guy who, it'd be easy to kind of look and say, you know what, I can't do it. Well, no, Eric Comrie has always believed in himself. This year, the organization believed in him, and now we saw an early result from that. So I thought that was a very important step for him. Anything else you wanted to add on Comrie?
Yeah, no. The only thing really is that his last start was January 31st, right? And then before that, his last start was 2019 December 15th. And those were Detroit. He played 3 games with Detroit there.
Yeah, one against the Jets, right? One against the Jets here.
North America. Exactly. So this is a guy who played one meaningful game in a year, and then one meaningful game, waited more than a year to play another meaningful game, and then waited 8 months or whatever it is, 10 months now, to play his next meaningful game. I mean, in 2 years or 3 seasons now, this guy's played 4 NHL games. I mean, that's a tough thing to do when you're kind of bouncing around all over North America. You're getting traded, claimed off waivers, coming back, doing all that stuff, taxi squad, whatever it is. I just think that I get it. I mean, I was one of the guys too who says, like, I wasn't confident. I didn't think he had his best training camp. He didn't show well in the preseason games, in my opinion. But I think this is a guy who maybe it's just a small bias here of how nice this guy is and how dedicated he seems to be to the game, where it's just like, okay, let's give this guy a shot in the regular season to see what he can do. And I think he took full advantage of that tonight. That second period flurry that you referred to, 16 shots, he saved 15 of them. I don't think that the Kempe goal was really on him. It was on the Jets, who just couldn't get the puck out of the zone. That's a tiring, taxing shift for a goaltender too, who is still moving around a lot in the net. Should he have saved that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that's perhaps if he had played more, that is more of a routine save. I don't even know. But that's what happens when you get hemmed in the zone. It's difficult. You're tracking the puck the whole time. I'm going off here on a lot, but I just think that Comrie tossed away some of his doubters tonight, or maybe converted some of them is the word that I should use. And we'll see next week, right? Because like you said, he's going to play Chicago or he's going to play the Islanders. One's a good team, one's a really struggling team. So who knows who he gets put in against. I think they do need to test him against a good team. I'd like to see him against the Islanders, but I don't know if that's great for hockey, for the winning mentality that the NHL teams have. But at the same time, I think that he's earned another start. He shed some of the question marks that we've had. We've all had them, and he's kind of earned his keep, I suppose, is the word. Or
sure,
phrase or whatever.
And to you, Will, I would say that if Hellebuck goes down, I don't think there's a comfort level with anyone in the net if Hellebuck goes down. I don't think that Devin Dubnyk, with all due respect to him, who's an incredible person and has had a long track record of success in the NHL, I don't think the Jets feel any more comfortable with Devin Dubnyk in net if Connor Hellebuck went down for an extended period of time. But today was just an important, again, much like I said before, if he had played poorly, I would have said the same thing. I mean, it's small sample size, but that was an important step for him. I want to just get back to something quickly. We're going to try to wrap up fairly soon, but Justin mentioned earlier about Paul Stastny. It seems like, at times he's obviously more comfortable at center. He spent almost his entire career at center. I mean, I personally don't think that the Jets should bump Adam Lowry to the fourth line so that you play Paul Stastny at center. I do think that he is more comfortable there, but I think that Paul Stastny knew kind of going into the year that he was going to be used on the wing. So, Justin, that's kind of how I feel about that. I think if the Jets needed someone to come in at center, they can use him. But to me, the fact that Paul Maurice tapped on Andrew Kopp's shoulder to move into center rather than Paul Stastny, I think that sort of suggests that he was just a little bit more comfortable in the 200-foot game of Kopp, maybe a little bit quicker and maybe just fewer, more, not as many taxing minutes for Stastny, and that's also allowed him to do a really nice job on the penalty kill. So again, I'd always be comfortable using Stastny at center, but I don't think Adam Lowry is a fourth line player, and I understand people want to stretch out the lineup, but I don't think taking away minutes from Adam Lowry helps make the Jets a better team, especially come playoff time where that kind of rugged style becomes even more important. I think I just don't see taking away minutes from Lowry as a way to make things happen. I'm just curious for what you think on that subject.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Paul Stastny, I think he can play the minutes if you need him to, but I think you want a fresh Paul Stastny. I mean, this is a 36-year-old player who's got a lot of mileage on him, and I think you put Paul Stastny where it makes the most sense at the time. But I don't think moving Adam Lowry off the third line makes any sense at all. No, I mean, yeah, I get it. I get the reason. People aren't happy with Riley Nash so far. I'm not sure I think part of that plays into the fact that he's playing on the top power play right now. That's going to change. This was a stopgap that I think Maurice looked at as we can get a net front presence, there and try and get some a screen in front of the goalie. Essentially, is what it was. So, yeah, I have no issue with it. And there's one question here. I don't know. I guess it was from Illegal Curve. Who loses more if Kolaris or Hellebuck went down? It's always that quarterback that's worse than the goalie. I mean, I think you can find a league average goalie and do reasonably well. When a quarterback goes down, I mean, we've seen this all the time. When you lose a number one quarterback anywhere in NFL, CFL, it goes right to poop. So, anyways.
And quick one here, just staying on Paul Stastny. Renny, yes, good point. I mean, this is something I dove into after the last game on the post-game show. I mean, the box out from Paul Stastny is the biggest reason that, Ehlers makes the perfect shot. But if there's no box out, there's no lane to get the perfect shot. And again, of course, on the second goal, he's providing a screen that, initially the puck must have gone off the skate of the defenseman in front because we thought it may have hit Stastny on the way in. So no doubt about that. Point well taken, and just so that you know, in case you weren't with us after the last game, we did dive into those subjects as well. I think Stastny has sort of found himself. I think it took him a little while to get back adjusted to the wing. I think starting in maybe the first game or two, but I thought his play, as someone else had said, his play has been quietly very sound. And I always talk about this. The fact that Paul Stastny, one of the biggest assets that he has, he's still a very productive and capable player, but I feel like he's the connector, and he's kind of become the conscience. He's become the role that Brian Little used to play, that has sort of squarely moved into Paul Stastny's arena. He's the conscience of the team, and has done a really nice job on so many levels. And then never mind, the leadership is also exceptional. This is a guy who has played on a lot of really good teams, know what it takes to win, and he's not afraid to voice his opinion, both for himself and also publicly, which we never, we don't see that quite as often. So what else we got? I think we're going to wrap pretty soon. Anything else got your attention?
No, I would say, I know there's a lot of people that want to talk about the shovel day off thing, and I have no skin in the game here, but I think everybody should go and watch. And I'm not trying to plug your thing. Well, I am, because I watched it, and I watched Frank Saravelli was just tremendous in the way that he spoke about it. Obviously an insider in this league, and talked really well, fluently about it. It was good. I know people want to talk about that whole situation. We'll figure out what happens tomorrow. I wrote a column on it. Kenny's wrote a column on it. We can all read. You guys can go and read what we think about it. I think in my opinion, everybody should be held accountable. I understand though that there is a segment of the fan base that wants to see more information come forward. We'll see if that becomes the case. We didn't really see that with Quenneville. I think that what we saw with Quenneville being fired was that the more information wasn't good. or whatever it was that came out of that thing, that meeting that they had earlier this afternoon. I also think there's a bit of Cheveldayoff fatigue in this town too, and people, this game tonight kind of took their mind off that a little bit, just get back to hockey for a little bit. So yeah, I think we will get an answer. I just want to think either way tomorrow. I think the league wants to put this to rest before the weekend just as much as the Jets do. Some will call it a PR move. That might be the case too. I mean, you don't want to go into the weekend. And I think that was part of it. And me and Kenny talked about this kind of privately before. I don't think the NHL wants this to drag through the weekend either, right? And fair enough. I mean, as however culpable the NHL, the league is in this whole thing, they need to deal with this. There's a lot of public pressure to deal with this. I mean, you can look at Twitter and read all the everything on Twitter. It's a tire fire, but it's because this is a big difficult situation and a very serious one that was covered up for more than a decade that needs to be addressed. And so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Neither of us can tell you what's going to happen. If we did, we would have reported it. And that's just the way that this kind of works. So I think like my headline was everybody there has blood on their hands, and I think that is the case. I agree with the headline that was given to my story, it's a very difficult, tough, sensitive situation. But yeah, I would like Kenny said off the top and throughout the show, I would encourage people to watch the Kenny Revy. I think it was the first episode you guys did this year, your long form. With Sarah Valley, and I know Jim Houston was also on the show, probably getting a little kind of.
We held Jim. Actually, Jimmy had to. We just stuck with Frank there, and Jim's going to join us another time. I'm the biggest fan, right? And I don't even know that Houston didn't come on, but no, you missed the beginning. You were waiting for quotes from California, so it's all good. Yeah, Jim's going to join us another time, which we're very appreciative of.
But anyways, I just think. I think it's a very difficult situation for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I understand fans like Kevin Cheveldayoff. Fans don't like Kevin Cheveldayoff. A lot of that stems from moves and this has torn people in half. I think the biggest thing that we have to remember here is Kyle Beach, and that video, that interview that Rick Westhead did yesterday. It was heartbreaking, and I would also encourage people, and I know Josh Morrissey did that this morning in his comments. Watch that video. I mean, because more than anything here, there's nothing, and this is what Frank said in the episode, and again, I encourage you to watch it. But he's like, there's nothing that you can really do about what happened 10 years ago, but we can move forward and change what happens next. And I think Kyle Beach was talked about that a little bit as well in his interview yesterday. Is that something needs to change, and I think whatever happens tomorrow will be it. There's going to be backlash, I think, either way, whatever the decision is. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the league and everybody just has to do better. So
yeah, no doubt, and that's the most important thing. Obviously, you can't take away Kyle Beach's pain, but what you can do is provide a safer environment so that nothing like this ever happens again. And it can't just be words; it has to be actions, and we expect those actions will be taken one way or another. And it's on everybody. And I loved what Frank said. I mean, it's not only on executives, it's not only on players, it's not only on the NHLPA. It's about everyone who's involved in the sport. And us as reporters have a responsibility on those fronts as well. And I think everyone's trying to learn more and more as we move along, and we will continue to try to make strides in that area so that hockey becomes a better place and that the culture gets to a better spot as well. So thanks again for everyone for hanging in there late. We know it's late here in the Central Time Zone. Awesome job as always in the chat room. Scott, as always, thank you for your contribution here. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone. And as Scott mentioned, if you haven't done so already, please check out the interview with Kyle Beach and Rick Westhead. And if you have a chance, also check out Frank Saravelia from Daily Faceoff with Sean Reynolds and me from earlier today as we dove a little bit deeper into the topics at hand. So thanks very much. Everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you Saturday night after the Jets at Sharks. Have a great weekend.